welcome to Northern Monkeys. It's Carl here. Today we're going to do a video on the Space Wolves, the 6th Legion. I'm going to be interviewing Dave, myself and David. So there's three of us on the video today. A joint interview panel on the 6th Legion. So I think we'll go straight into the video and over to Dave. So why the 6th Legion, the Space Wolves, the Val Fenrica?
So we spoke on a previous video about how we first got into the hobbies.
Yeah.
For me, it was a train trip in 1992, but I didn't actually know about the 40k until a bit later. So I've always been a nerd. My credentials are long running. There's comics all over the attic, if you were to look.
Well qualified.
It's a bit of a man cave of random nerddom. And so when I was about 13, 14, I also collected comics. Now, there was a little comic shop in the bottom of the Peace Hall called Comicville, which
I remember
those of you remember it.
Yeah.
And they sold all things nerd. I used to buy comics from there, but you obviously bumped into people and you had overlapping interests.
Yeah.
And I recall being in there with my friend. We were buying some comics. I was picking some stuff up. And we were basically talking about Star Trek, which is not related to 40k at all. We were talking about Klingon battlers and how cool they are.
They are.
Yeah, very cool
Is that
weapons.
like the Klingon blade thing?
Yeah.
Oh,
Big two-handed thing with the big prongs out. Very cool.
Yeah.
Not very practical, but they look cool as fuck, right? Cool as shit. And I'd been chatting. Me and my friend had been talking about if we ever buy one, we would. And this chap piped up out of the background and said, "Oh, I've got some battlers." Turns out this chap was a blacksmith. He'd done a load of work and he'd made some mild steel. They were chuffing ton, but he'd made mild steel battlers. He just chopped them out with a welder, basically.
You wasn't worried about some random guy going, "I've got some of that. Come with me. I'll show you."
No. It was of a similar age to us.
Okay.
So I mean, he was southern. So obviously there was trust issues in the accent area, but no, he talked about had these battles. Anyway, I got to know his bloke really well. Obviously, I bought the battles. I don't know where it is now, but I had it for a long time.
Wow.
And turns out he lived over the valley to where me and Firth lived. And what essentially happened is we sort of talked about it. He talked about this game called Warhammer 40,000. I'd had a cursory introduction to Games Workshop as a whole anyway.
Yeah.
But he said, "Yeah, come over, we'll have a game." As you know, all good people looking to push their habit onto somebody else does. You know, come have a go. First goes free.
Myself.
Yeah, your first goes free. Come over and have a look.
Yeah.
Anyway, I went over to his house, and he had it set up on a pool table in a bar area. So there was a jukebox. Cool. Yeah, it was pretty cool actually. And he'd set up all this thing, and we played his first proper games. And at the time,
What army were you playing then?
well, I wasn't at the time. I mean, I was. He played Dark Angels.
Yeah.
So the Space Marines were obviously the way to go because they look cool as fuck.
Absolutely.
As you might expect a 15, 16-year-old might think. And he had the Angels of Death 2nd edition Codex book.
Oh, that was the first one I had as well.
Yeah, it's a great book. Lots of really good artwork in there.
Yeah.
Lots of really cool bits and pieces. But I'd essentially gone into it thinking about that. But he'd said, "Oh yeah, but people make their own chapters all the time." Wasn't known as a homebrew chapter back then. You know, the internet hadn't kind of codified that into something. So I had this idea of these Marines living on this ship, sort of crusading around the galaxy, before I knew things like the Templars. In fact,
Yeah, I'm going to say, yeah.
Templars didn't really exist at the time. They were a footnote probably in the paperwork.
Yeah, the law wasn't expansive at all, was it?
Yeah, there was nothing like that. The Imperial Fists were all that really existed.
I mean, I think the Horus Heresy was like 2 chapters.
Yeah.
Two
it was
paragraphs,
nothing, was it?
wasn't it? Yeah.
Well, the only thing we knew about the heresy then was that diagram, was it? That scene diorama. Thank you. Word's gone. And it was just those 2 pictures, and then those black and white drawings that existed. That was the only thing about the heresy we knew. But yeah, so I'd had this idea about these Marines who would be sort of crusading around, essentially what you might think the Viking raiding parties were, out on the boats doing their thing, smash and grabs. So that's what I was aiming for before I even knew what Space Wolves were. And circumstances were that I'd come across them elsewhere, and I was in the shop and saw the big cool Viking things. I thought, oh yeah, that's kind of more what I was aiming for.
So just connected at that time.
And for anyone who's seen the cupboards where I've got my models, there's
We'll
a
put
chunk.
some pictures up for those.
Yeah, there's a chunk of Dreadnoughts. And it was actually my gateway drug to Space Wars was Beyond the Fell-Handed.
Great model.
The old white model one, yeah.
He's really good in the lore as well.
Yeah, cool as fuck.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. And that's what got me into the wolves. The big lightning claw, the fur on the side, the massive assault cannon.
Oh, they're amazing.
That's
The
what
conversions that you've done onto them and added all the sort of Viking, pelts and iconography stuff to them. They look really good. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. But I have a bit of a project long term. Is that I want to own Beyond in every variant of Dreadnought, like a Beyond through the ages sort of thing, and have like a
Beyond again.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. So that's obviously why there's a load of models up there that are ostensibly the same model.
Do you know what? I didn't know that actually. I don't think you'd mentioned that before. And now I'm sat looking at the cabinets and I can see that evolution through to the huge suit that's almost the size of a knight.
Well, I've got essentially I've tried to do it. Each one's got a lightning claw and the assault gun.
Yeah.
In some form or other.
Because he got his hand cut off, didn't he? And then always, bore he was the fell-handed, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
For me, anything Viking always makes me roll my eyes as to what we were saying before about, you go to a pub and there's someone with runes tattooed outside the red and you're just like, what are you doing, mate?
Dave has no runes.
Yeah.
However, I'm sort of, you've sort of converted me with, when you first said you collected Space Wolves, I'm not going to lie, they were a bit of a, oh, bloody. Here we go again. But they are like, I can't think of a better Space Marine chapter that lend itself to sort of conversion work that you do. I mean, obviously you can convert anything.
Yeah.
But it works so well, I think.
Yeah. And I think going back to that, when I started the hobby, I mean, I enjoyed the tabletop. I enjoyed playing second edition. There was a funny story about second edition actually. We were all playing obviously as amateurs. There wasn't these professional standards that people have on YouTube and people can verify it. So it was all a case of house rules, as you might expect.
Just agree and play, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so there was an instance I remember we were all in the Games Workshop near where we lived. It was Bradford, I think, at the time, so it wasn't local. We had to go out to get there, but we were talking about, as you do, you get in there and the chap's like, oh well, what project are you working on, what can we get you, how can we upsell this that to you? But
they still do that today, don't they?
Yeah, well, we gone in and I think my friend was buying some Imperial Guard tanks or something. I can't remember what was happening, but long short of it is we were all there, we were having a look round, and the conversation came up that I'd been collecting Space Wolves. I'd got the Codex, I started to play it, and this guy came out with this thing about how the Wolf Guard Terminators for the Space Wolves, in the rules, if you read them the way that they were down, they had no limitations on what weapons they could carry.
Really?
Now, usually things like lightning claws come in pairs, things like that.
Yeah.
And
no assault cannon, no anti-claw missile combination.
But it didn't say anything about that in relation to it. Now, this may or may not have been true, factually, on the grounds. But I was there. Everybody I played was there. They all heard it. So I just took it as gospel that was the rule. So for a long portion of the games I did play with second edition My Space Wars, I had 5 Terminators that would have a Cyclone unit, a Lightning Claw, and an assault cannon. Because that's what the man said we could do.
And to be fair, when you're young, if the dude in Games Workshop says they're the rules, that's like you said.
Man said I could do that, therefore I can do that.
I did it about 2 years with my Ultramarines, so I got away with it for a few games.
So did you ever lose a game?
I did all right. The Dark Angels seemed to suffer quite badly, and I just put my Terminators on.
Withering firepower.
Yeah, that's it.
That'd be so funny if his entire army had a dispute.
First company all with the cyclones, assault cannons and claws. That would look good though.
And my entire army is going to fire at that squad. I'm rolling my 600 dice now.
Gone. Everything would be gone.
Oh, good times. Yeah, weirdly I did win quite a lot. I can't imagine why. But I mean, we played the rules fast and loose. I mean, basically the rule was, if you had the money to buy a thing, you could use it in your army because you just spent a fuckload of money on a thing to get in the army.
It's a good rule.
So I remember that when the Imperial Guard player decided he had enough of his men getting horribly slaughtered by what was essentially Chaos or Space Marines, they just decided to resolve that issue by buying jet bikes for the Eldar and sticking Imperial Guard men on it.
Wow.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a cool conversion.
Yeah.
It's good concept. They've stole the bikes, they can ride them, yeah.
It was a bit footloose and fancy free with the rules.
I think the commissar would have something to say about that.
Yeah, and we all tried to find ways of killing what was then the great menace of the table, which was the Fire Prism Eldar grav tank. Do you remember that? It could fire as a beam, but also as an AoE. When you had those markers back in the day, but it hit like with the strength of the mountain.
Remember them?
Yeah,
I didn't really play much when I first started out. Yeah, I was more just painting really. But on the Space Wolves, I mean, obviously you've come to a point now where you've collected a considerable amount of models, sort of 4 shelves in a big cabinet. There's a Thunderhawk in there and several large vehicles. So, what's as you moved on with the hobby, sort of what stories have you built around them? Maybe that's kind of something that'd be interesting to hear, because I know when you build your models, you always do put a tale to them, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, there's not so much with the lore as such with most of the things. I mean, as I said, in the Monkeys, there are people that are very rules, table sort of fixated, and we've got people that like the painting. I very much enjoyed the building, the making of the models, converting them. So a lot of the times it's that's a cool model, I'd like to make that out of this. Yeah. Like if you look at, obviously you can't see this, but in the shelf there's the Leman Russ in the middle, and then there's the Primarchs wolf priest that I made for Ulrich the Slayer, and then there's a dude next to him that looks like an old man Ragnar, and that's basically what I made. I made an old man Ragnar.
Yeah, we'll put a picture of those up.
Yeah. My thought was, I liked the new Ragnar model with him flying through there, all dynamic and groovy. Yeah. But what would Ragnar look like as Logan Grimnar? That sort of thing. Is that the destiny of that character within the lore, within the narrative? So I essentially made what I thought was an older Ragnar and how he might look compared to someone like Logan Grimnar.
It's great seeing all that sort of lore that you've built around the models. I do enjoy it, and it brings them to life a bit more, doesn't it?
So we'll put some slides up. To be fair, I actually think we need to do a separate video with all your conversion work. But what about your? What was the inspiration behind the big tank you've got?
Oh yeah. Everyone talks about true scale. These aren't real true scale Marines. These are really X, Y, and Z. And I always thought the Rhino and the Predator tank were a bit small and a bit shit.
Definitely.
Basically, for want of a better word. And I'd gone halves on a Heresy box set with a friend. And the bits that we split up, we essentially brought the kit up. And I got the Contemptor Dreadnought. I got the Spartan assault tank, the Land Raider, and I got some of the Terminators, the Cataphractizers, as a part of my my sort of horde. It's not bad. I did all right, but I already had 2 Land Raiders that I'd bought when I'd originally sort of tried to play the game in 2nd and 3rd.
Really good model, Land Raider. I love it.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a nice kit. It's a nice kit. But I wanted to do something different. I didn't want yet another sort of tank that was another Land Raider. So I decided to look at making myself something that was an equivalent of like the Kratos tank. So a bit of a bigger model, a bit more beefy, a bit more sort of realistic as to what you think maybe a Space Marine tank would be, rather than it being that very petite looking Predator tank, which I always had a problem with. So that's what I did. In the end, built up the assault tank as spec, took out a lot of the front stuff, built into marble plates, took out the guns that were there. Then built obviously an apparatus for a dozer blade to sit on it, rather than it being that much smaller sort of spiky clearance thing.
And that's huge.
The dozer blade looks absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it's really well painted.
Well, I mean, I do have Iron Warrior sympathies as well, so that's why it's hazard striped.
Yeah, you can see that coming through.
I mean, even with hazard stripes, the yellow and Space Wolves go.
It's close enough to blend in and pretend that it is meant to be that, rather than a sympathy for Perturabo. But so I'd done that, and then I'd found a turret from a 3D printer on eBay, which then obviously I had to build a turret ring for the top of it, because it's not, the tank doesn't come with that, and it's not intended to have anything like that. And then always like the Volkite guns from when Heresy came out. They look cool, and with them being new and stuff and interesting, I decided that if this was a representation of a different kind of tank, with Space Wolves being originally a legion and one of the founding sort of legions, I thought that we could sort of slide in. This was an old model of tank that no longer exists in the current law, but was.
I'm sure they've got some in the Fang. It's,
exactly.
In the motor pool, or
that's it. Well, I mean, you've got to think about it. The idea of, and that's true with a lot of the founding sort of legions, is that they were obviously forces much larger that had then been reduced thanks to Robert Gilliman. So
yeah, it's true.
Thanks very much, Ultramarines.
Indeed, got some organisation into the legions.
Yeah, so the Et itself is obviously a large fortress. I think, is it the second largest in the actual Imperium?
I think the Fang is the second largest mountain next to Olympus Mons on Mars.
Possibly, yeah. It is arguably the largest, probably, Space Marine fortress.
The Emperor called it one of the wonders of the galaxy, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it's a massive sort of institution.
Yeah, it goes into orbit, I believe, doesn't it? It's so high.
Touches up,
into atmosphere. Sorry.
Yeah, there's low Earth, there's low orbit docking locations on it, much like the spaceport on Terra. So my idea was,
my idea was just an icy cave.
That's exactly it.
The GW's display at Warhammer World doesn't quite do the scale of it justice, does it?
Yeah.
So what do you think of Leman Russ?
Interesting. I liked the feral nature of the Primarch when I was first coming into the lore, the story. Yep. The idea of this no fucks given dude that resists the sort of status quo with the experiences that he comes to. So you get the impression from the interactions with the Emperor that he accepts the circumstances by which he finds himself, because he's so much different to everybody on Fenris.
I guess he does come across as far more at ease with who he is than a lot of the other sort of mental issues that a lot of the Primarchs seem to have.
He's comfortable with his own rage, in his own skin,
But he's also, I mean, unless I'm wrong here, he's not very close with any of them neither, is he?
No, I think he's more. He's always
a lone wolf, you might say.
Yeah, indeed.
He always seems to be more involved with his own legion than he is with his brothers. Now that's probably true of some of the other Primarchs as well. I think I've always kind of, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I've always kind of seen him similar to the way that Rogel Dawn is. Kind of a bit stoic, a bit practical,
a bit aloof.
I wonder how far Fenris is from Terra, and if it's just that I mean, he was the second found Primarch, wasn't he? So
yeah.
Think
it's on the other side of the Imperium now. It's not. He's in Imperium now, isn't it now? So it's far enough away that, but I think it might only be a segmentum over.
Yeah.
From the segmentum solar. But,
it's just, the quite sort of the defined out the Space Wolves culture compared to a lot of the other legions, and they're very sort of purist with it, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think there could be an argument that they are contrarian for the sake of being contrarian, but I think it's more about them being quite cantankerous. If you think about the circumstances that they recruit from, Fenris is the only planet that they actually recruit from, and they've had an appalling track record with successor chapters as the Space Wolves.
Yeah, there's something with that in there.
So they only really recruit from Fenris, and so the circumstances on that planet with the winter and the thawing of the ice sheets and them having to run to essentially what is the dry land every year. The culture on the planet is essentially migratory, and so I think that would promote in the people that come from it a sense of what works, and I'm not going to change it merely because you suggested it.
Yeah.
See that it's an interesting thing you've touched on there, because I think on a side note, but I hope you understand my point. It's like Conrad Kurz didn't like the people that were getting from Nostromo because they were basically criminals again.
Yeah.
And it seems to be that, like you said, the seed of the people who you're getting, even once you turn them to Astartes, doesn't seem to change. However, Rogel Dawn gets all these guys from Necromunda, and they're all like gangers and stuff.
Well, it's the same with the Lunar Wolves, wasn't it? From Calf, they recruited from the Underslave, from the Underhive, and from the gangs.
Yeah.
They indoctrinate and train the
It does, but
initiates, though, don't they?
it seems to me that the gene seed changes a person, obviously, but it changes some people, some legions more than others. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, the wolves seem to sort of retain a bit more of themselves, don't they? I think.
So, I think they're just fiercely independent, and that's partly because of their lifestyle.
If all the Space Wolves come from Fenris, how did that work when they first found him? Because presumably the Legion was already together like the rest of them.
Well, it'd be like Death Guard, wasn't it? Like with Garrow.
Garrow
was from Terra originally, and then the recruitment drove from there.
They was in the Emperor's. They were created in the Emperor's laboratory, weren't they? The first legions.
Is there any lore of how the Terran-born Space Wolves got on with the Fenris born? Because obviously they won't have grown up as basically a space Viking, will they?
No, not really.
Nice.
But I mean, if you look back to the Dawn of Fire books, Wolf Time, when they bring the Primaris stock to Fenris, Logan Grimnar will have nothing to do with it. He says, no, jog on. And it's essentially in the book, Logan Grimnar is preparing for what he thinks is essentially the chapter's demise. They're expecting Leman Russ to turn up for the Wolf Time and everyone to end, and that'll be it. And that the Space Wolves will go out in this glorious death.
Right, okay, like a Valhalla type.
Yeah, and it takes a Primaris who's attempting to essentially join a pack. They say, well, you're not Space Wolf because you didn't go through the trials. So he says, fine. And he jumps out of the dropship, out in the middle of Fenris, and works his way back to the Fang. And he gets back to the Fang, having killed like a Thunderwolf and things like that, and saved people and all the rest of it. And he gets back to the Fang, accepting essentially to be executed for disobeying and from getting there. And that act and the deeds the Primaris does on his journey, almost like a saga, then convinces Logan Grimnar to accept the Primaris rather than not.
Oh, that's
a great story. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's interesting. So they the Templars have had this friction, haven't they, with the Primaris as well?
Yeah.
And so it's a similar thing where I think those, and arguably the Templars are much like the Space Wolves in the sense that they're independent and they won't be told.
Yeah.
You know, they won't keep to the Codex Astartes about number size and
no, they're fleet based.
Yeah, because was it the Space Wolves who killed who started fighting with Inquisition and Grey Knives?
Yeah.
They did, yeah. They've had several arguments.
They wanted to kill all people who've been evacuated.
Yeah.
It was a chaos turn or something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So yeah, like that is cool about them actually. They are like fiercely
independent.
independent.
Well, and to the point where the Inquisition have laid siege to Fenris, and it was resolved through other means. Yeah, but yeah, and that I think the point is that they keep, rather than keeping to the politics perhaps of a changing Imperium, they keep to a credos that comes from the planet itself, and that's immutable throughout the chapter.
So going back to Leman Russ, do you think that is basically comes from the way he was?
Yeah,
doing his own thing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely. But I mean, obviously, there's the idea of the Space Wolves being the Emperor's executioners, isn't there?
Yep, and the possibility of him having something to do with the Lost Legions.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's hinted at a couple of times.
Yeah.
When they go to Prospero to essentially destroy the planet, don't they? Pretty much. There's a line, isn't there? I'm sure that Leman Russ says it won't be the first time that we've done it.
Yeah.
Marines against Marines. Yeah. It's interesting as well, though, isn't it? Because the first founded Primarch is Horus.
Yep.
And they're the Lunar Wolves. And the second found is Leman, and they're the Vilka Rika, but Space Wolves known colloquially.
Yeah.
Which is a slur to them. They don't. It's a name given to them, like Porch Monkeigh or something.
Oh,
right. Okay. It's not their identifying name. They're the route or the Vilka Rika.
It's a good job they want one of them on Mars because they'd have been the Mars Wolves and there'd have just been 20 Wolves Legions.
But if you think about the roles that both Horus and Leman have taken up within the wider Imperium, you've got Horus becoming the War Master and being the chief attack dog. When the Emperor wanted something killed like Luna, it was the Lunar Wolves and Horus he sent in, and when someone needs to be brought into line, it's with the Space Wolves that he uses.
Okay.
Which is what I was going to bring up about. I think is he the Primarch that's actually fought more Primarchs than any other.
Wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, I mean, there's
He's a brawler, isn't it?
Yeah.
Magnus. Well, it might be him or Rogel Dawn, because Rogel Dawn has a bit of a list as well, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But yeah, so what? Magnus, Lionel Johnson. Yeah, that's Scuffle, isn't it? Scuffle. And then we've got Angron as well.
Yep.
So there's definitely those, and that wasn't tat. It was actually coming to blows.
Which I think the Angron story is actually quite cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it existed for millennia that any time a Dark Angels and Space Wolves chat to mate, they had to get a champion, have a duel, didn't they?
Yeah.
Is it to death that?
I think it's to first blood. I think it's more of an honorary thing, and I think the Dark Angels are sick to death of it, and the Space Wolves insist on it. which goes to the character, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm remembering, so this might not be quite how the cadence of it is that there was obviously an upset between Lion and Leman Russ, and the Lion took it as an honour, a besmirchment, and Leman Russ was like, well, if you want to fight, let's fight, and they obviously duked it out. I think it's like this situation where both sides claim victory, but whereas the Dark Angels aren't bothered by it, the Space Wolves insist on carrying it on.
I'm sure I read that they fought for days as well when they did, and really did each other a bad injury.
Is that the one where did one of them stop and then the other one sucker punched them afterwards? Is that how it worked?
I'll have to read up on it.
Did Leman Russ stop fighting and were laughing? And then
Lion knocked him out.
The Lion's autism kicked in and he
I think
knocked
so.
him out.
And that's my memory of it back.
Yeah.
But it's one of those situations where, they say they won because this person, but then they say, well, he stopped, clearly.
Well,
because he was the victor.
Well, that's kind of like Angron, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Angron thought he won that, even though it was just like, Angron, like...
Yeah. Well, Angron looked at on the strength of the fight, didn't he? He said, essentially, I beat you because I've won.
Yeah.
And then Leman Russ, the argument from Leman Russ's point of view is, you're separated from the rest of your legion, no one gives a shit about you, and all my legion are here to kill you. Even if you beat me in this fight, you would die.
Yeah.
So you've surrendered the war to win the battle.
Yeah.
And then that's the lesson that he doesn't learn. And that's from Logar saying, you're an idiot. That's how that thing went on. How can you believe that you won? Because that's the circumstance. Leman Russ was offering out a lesson for you to pick up. And that's the difference, I think, between those two things is the wolves are essentially fury restrained.
Yep.
If you read the books, they come across as sort of much more intelligent, and they play up to other legions. The the savageness and when they're in their own company, they don't kind of behave in the same way.
Yeah.
They do drink a lot of what's it?
Mjord.
Mjord, that's it. Yeah,
like super mead.
Yes, space wolves can actually get drunk if it's strong enough.
That
apparently.
must be like tenants extra. That must be
extra tenants. But
Kestrel super strength.
Yeah,
they still maintain that sort of Viking drinking, feasting hall things type in the Fang, I think. But
right. Well, I mean, the interesting thing about the current setting is we've obviously got everything on the board to play for as far as Primarch's concerned. I mean, going back to that conversation we had previously about the hobby and where we started it, the Primarchs at that point were these mythical creatures that were just existed in an ether beyond any expectation of seeing them. But I remember second edition Codex talked about it, and there's this little bit, and it's a picture that now looks nothing like Leman Russ. This old tooth-nailed sort of screenshot, like a passport picture.
Yeah.
And it was talking about the wolf time, and that's the first time they mentioned it. And it sort of said something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing, that wherever I end up, wherever darkness holds me, I'll be there with you at the final wolf time. So there's this idea of the Space Wolves expect Leman Russ to return. Yeah. And the story in the sort of the official narrative, if you like, isn't clear as to what he actually went to do. Obviously, he disappears, much like the loyalist Primarchs did. There's the most common sort of thread I've seen is conversations about him going to try find the Tree of Life in the warp to help resurrect the Emperor. So rather than perhaps we've got this older lion who's obviously aged, and he's 10. He looks like Charles Dance. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
He looks cool as fuck. But we've got this older, sophisticated lion that has this different perspective to the one that we saw in the Heresy. We might get a Leman Russ that is as vital and primal as he was during that period, if he's been in the warp running around these 10,000 years.
Just because of warp time and how it
Yeah,
relates
exactly.
to normal space time.
Yeah, exactly. So we might
He
get
wasn't
that.
solo either, was he?
No, he went with the first company.
Yeah.
Because if you in the story, what happens is there's essentially they're feasting in the halls in the Et, and Leman Russ is perturbed by something. He's not joining in, and Bjorn the Fell-Handed says, what's the crack? What's going on, mate? And he says, I'm going and I'm taking the first company with me. And then Bjorn attempts to go with him, because by this point, Bjorn the Fell-Handed is part of his inner guard, his retinue, like the house cows,
Okay.
and he gets told he can't go, that he has to stay with the wolves. And Bjorn becomes the first chapter master of the wolves after the Codex Astartes and Guilliman breaking everybody up.
So I guess he would see that as a deep insult to him, but I guess the reality is you're the best man for a job. You're the only one I trust to do this.
I think so.
Deal.
Yeah, so I also think that's why he's hung on as long as he had. So
He's waiting for him to come back.
Because he remembers the stories about the wolf time, and he's that direct link back to those days.
Because he is like one of, if not the oldest Marine, isn't he? I mean, I know he's not like Dante, where he's continuous, but Bjorn's like, he was there.
There's not a lot of
Heresy?
them that are as old as that. I mean, the law changes a little bit.
There was
now that
slept
we've
a lot
got
in
the
between,
Primarch.
wasn't
Yeah,
it?
like the Primarchs, obviously that changes things because they're obviously
Yeah.
from that time period. But no, it definitely is a case that he's arguably one of the oldest life forms or humans alive in the Imperium in that sense.
Yeah, because he's been awakened so many times in that period of time and gone back to sleep like Dreadnoughts do.
Yeah. And he was for example, he was in command of the Et when the Thousand Sons attacked it with Magnus. So 9th edition, we have the return of Guilliman. We have all that story, the Dark Imperium stuff, and we have Magnus returning to the setting as the Demon Primarch, which I think arguably is one of the best models I've ever seen. Just to talk about something I enjoy.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful model. That Primus, that Magnus the Red model, but they attack Fenris and they attack the
Which
Et.
one, the GW one or the Forge World one?
Oh, I think the GW one.
He's got. He's
I'm not a big
absolutely
fan of
huge,
it.
isn't he?
Not a big fan of that.
Big wings.
Yeah, I do
that's how I
like
was
the
trying to
wings.
remember it then.
I don't know.
Yeah.
He looks naked, doesn't he?
Well, I think he's.
It looks a bit like Hellboy, yeah. He's but it's a cool model still. Definitely.
I like it. I like that. I like that more than the Mortarion one. I think. But I think it depends.
Yeah,
on
we've got the
interest.
Mortarion one, and it's huge, but it's not. Yeah, it's a better sculpt as a Magnus one. I
like Comrade Carl. Then we've got the Mortarion.
Yeah. Possession is 9/10 of the law.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's in my man cave.
Well,
so
yeah.
it's mine.
We've got a couple of Rubber Gillimans as well, haven't we, Cal?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
So, where's your position on whether he was a bit silly in basically taking Horus's order to go kill Magnus? Do you think he were a bit short-sighted in going, hang on a minute?
Well, I think
Maybe I should...
Leman he was on the side of, like Mortarion, where they had a distrust of the Psychers at the Monkeigh Council. So I think Horus played on what he knew was a prejudice already within Leman. And to be fair to him, the change was only little, wasn't it? The idea was that he needed
He was
to
going
bring,
to arrest him anyway.
yeah,
wasn't he?
they were sent to censure and bring Magnus back to Terra, and all Horus did was change it from censure to destroy. And if the other lost legions, if that is true, and it was Leman and the Space Wolves that essentially purged those two legions, then that would fall within his wheelhouse anyway.
That's some good apologetics, that, you know.
It's a good link, though.
No, it is. It
Makes
is
sense.
because by that point he's War Master, so his word's the Emperor's word, basically, isn't it?
Yeah.
If he starts going to Daddy and going, well, look, he's told me to do this, is that right?
Yeah, it's not apologies. It's not apologising, but it is nuance.
Yeah.
I'd like to give the situation a bit of nuance.
They follow orders when the Emperor sends them to do the job. They do it, don't they?
Yeah. And like you said, that's also to the nature of the Legion, Space Wolves. When he talks about them creating the Primarchs, he talked about adding animals and stuff. It's clear the intimation from GW is that dogs and wolves were used in the creation of the wolves. Wolves and dogs are loyal to each other in the pack,
Of course, yeah.
and they're loyal to the alpha, aren't they?
Yeah.
So if we think the Emperor's the
disloyal
alpha,
to any outsider.
yeah,
That's
suspicious of things that aren't within their wheelhouse.
Some Thunderwolf DNA in there.
And the old the Thousand Sons were the antithesis of that, weren't they? They were the foreign non-pack. They're the most different to what the wolves are in relation to the legions.
There are no wolves on Fenris then. I think that brings it to that, really, doesn't it? Yeah.
And while we're on that subject, as I say, I was away from the hobby a long time.
quite a few on Perturabo.
Yeah.
Not Perturabo. Oh. I killed that.
Well, I'm going to make you carry on just to suffer the pain. But some of the models that
Prospero.
GW did, Prospero,
Yeah,
that's the
Prospero,
word you're looking for. Some of the models that they come out with in the last sort of intervening time are a bit weird, aren't they? I mean, the weird Santa sleigh that Rogan Grimnar rides around in, it's a bit shit. I mean, I get what they're going for. They're trying to lean into the whole Viking boat thing, but
Yeah.
Especially with their history of having great Space Wolf models, though. Because I remember even as a kid that Beyond the Fell Handed, that was like a legit Dreadnought. I think there's a metal one of it in there.
Yeah.
That was like an early character.
Yeah.
It's like putting, another Primarch on a surfboard. It's another chapter master on a surfboard, maybe, or something.
Yeah, it's not good. I don't like it. Not a fan of that at all.
I think that's when it's like the heads that they made that were just straight wolf helmets, and everyone just like that.
No.
That were a big backfire for GW as well.
You didn't see them about for long, did you?
No.
So, I think the problem is when you've got like a Viking aesthetic, it's like how far do you push it?
Yeah.
But like you say, like getting pulled about on a longboat, it's probably taking it.
I think for example, it's not that they don't have form on this, because look at the tanks of the Sisters of Battle. That is probably on par with something like the Sled.
Yeah.
But it works for the Sisters.
It does look good, yeah.
But maybe it's just my own personality thinking it's just a bit too far.
No, I agree with you that it's too far. Even though, again, with the Sisters, is it The Exorcist where there's a dude playing organ, firing rockets off
a giant temple with an organ and an artillery gun on the back of it.
Yeah, it
seems
is.
perfectly fine and totally cogent.
Church on wheels.
But Santa on his sleigh can't deal with it. Just takes me out of it a bit too much. I think if they maybe made something of, I could see like the Stormwolf, which is that assault ship.
Yeah.
If they'd made that look more like a boat, I think I'd be fine with that.
Yeah.
Like a boat.
Even if it just had like a prow on it.
Yeah, just shaping form of it. That'd be okay. But the Santa Sled thing with Logan is not great. And I don't know how I feel about the Thunder Wolf Cavalry either. I don't own any because a lot of the models are 3rd edition and obviously the 2nd edition, and I spend my time making stuff.
Yeah.
Are they the ones with the bionic legs?
Yeah, and they literally ride a giant wolf. It's
but some of them have got like a bionic leg, haven't they? Bionic paw,
Yeah. I don't know. There's bits about it that I think are a bit weird, and I'm hoping that if the rumor verse is true and that the 11th will bring a Space Wolves refresh, then that'd be nice.
Well, I think Russ is coming back. There's no two ways about that.
I think GW will bring back as many Primarchs as it makes money.
Yeah.
And of course that's going to make money.
As I said in that other video, they'll bring back dead Primarchs, and once there's no Primarchs to bring back.
Yeah.
They've got 2 spare to nobody knows where they are or who they was. So.
But have you heard this, that he might come back not looking like a man, he might come back looking like some sort of like wolf beast?
Yeah, I don't know if that's just like internet conjecture, because there's a couple of models that have been made, haven't they? But a lot of this, I think, also is about that Dorian Heresy. Have you heard of that? It's a group of guys that it's like a group of people, not necessarily linked, but they make like alternative timeline models. So they'll make like a what if Dawn led the heresy rather than Horus?
Oh, okay.
And so they'll
Yeah,
make
it's
alternatives.
actually pretty good. There's
Pretty
a couple
decent.
more videos.
Yeah, and so
a few of them really work as well.
there's a couple of them where they've created like demon Primarchs, but of other Primarchs, and one of them is like if Khorne was to take Leman Russ, and that's where you get these kind of massive werewolf creatures.
Yeah.
Big, but I think Pete the Wargamer did one with Angron, but made it into a
I've seen that.
into Leman Russ,
Yeah.
which is really cool. It's very cool.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Concepts.
I think it is interesting. There is that whole wolf sign thing, isn't there, where they have the like the 13th company, the Legion, the Wolfen company, where they're all part wolf.
Yeah.
And there's that argument about that they're a less stable gene seed.
What do you think of the Wolfen? Because I think the models look nice. I think it's just a bit too far.
Yeah, I think I remember it coming out and being really excited by it because they talked about the Wolfen for a long time, the 13th company that nobody knew about. Some of the models look great. I think I'd like to see. I think probably if I was thinking about it from a modelling point of view, I think all the heads look really cool, and I could see myself using them on models. But I think having them all as just like melee focused assault, I think that kind of takes it off for me. I quite like the idea of them being just at that point, but still being sort of Marines and more like a Legion of the Damned thing, like an attachment rather than a whole company.
Blood Angels have got something similar.
Death Company. How we're going to say that?
No, not the Death Company. It's the Tower of whatever it's called. They let them all out when they're absolutely gone, and some of them are not even like human anymore.
Oh, I'm not too sure about that. I thought that was the Death Company that they essentially in the Blood Angels they think they wear black, don't they? And they've got the rage.
I look forward to all the fact checking on the internet when this goes on.
Yeah.
I think that's what he's talking about. But
It's not. I'm talking about something else.
Well, I mean, yeah, the Wolfen, I like the idea of. A lot of the models are quite cool, but I think, like I said, a lot of it is very similar, very generic. It's just melee stuff and assault. And if that's the idea of them, maybe have them like the Death Company, more as an attachment to the wider army rather than it being a whole fighting force in its own right.
Yeah, they do lend to being converted a bit. That kit though,
it's nice. Yeah, it's a really nice piece. There's one-off bits as well. Like I've got a load of the shoulder pads of the Wolfen Company, and it's half the Space Wolves logo, but then it's a skull on the other side.
Oh, that's cool.
Looks really cool.
I've not seen those before.
Yeah, it looks really cool.
Yeah, it's Tower of Amaro.
Oh, okay.
Where they end up looking like apes and the giant.
And I've not read about that. Sorry, no.
You have, because it's in Devastation of Baal.
Okay.
They let them all
I forgot
out.
about that. Then
Yeah.
I'll say.
Well, you're allowed to forget one little bit of law in relation to it.
I think you read so many books sometimes they blend into.
You read more books than anyone. I'm surprised you don't remember that one.
That's probably why they've got diluted over the 100 or so. So yeah, good, all good though. I do really enjoy the Warhammer fiction, reading it.
Yeah,
I think I might have to check some Space Wolves stories out.
Made a believe you, have I?
Yeah, I think you might have done. You definitely did with your models as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, current culture aside, if you take them as the red, they're quite good.
Yeah,
I quite like like I said, the idea of them being independent and knowing their own minds and not to be moved on a particular subject. I think is what appeals to me.
And I think without treading old ground as well, I don't think there's a better Legion chapter rather for conversions. It lends itself so well to it, doesn't it? You
can do a lot with not much.
Yeah,
the tokens and the fetish bits and teeth, horns that hang off talismans and things like that is easy done.
You make a lot of parts yourself though, don't you? And sculpt them and add those, don't you? When you can see on the pictures that are on there now, there'll be loads of details that you'll see on all of his models for sure.
Yeah, it's nice.
And I'm sure if you want another video of like a bit more close up, in depth of his conversions and in speaking about it, like leave us a comment. I'm sure that's something Dave would be willing to do.
Yeah, we can do that. Definitely.
Oh, all right. Well, thanks for listening today. If you can like and subscribe, or you've got any requests for videos, please do that. And yeah, that's all from us today. Thanks, guys. Cheers.